Hello, this is Dr. Tanya Rampersad, ND. Thanks for joining me. This is the masterclass on developing patience. And they say if you can't do something or be something, then you should teach it. And that's because teaching actually helps you learn faster and better than just reading about it. Of course, just learning about patience does not help one become more patient. And I can almost guarantee that by the end of this class, you are not going to be more patient than you were at the beginning or than you are right now. But what I would like to do is pose patience in a different light and have you think about things a little bit differently. Because really my whole motive is to help people develop inner authority so they can make better decisions for themselves. And I want to talk about patience from that perspective. So we're going to be talking about why developing patience is important from the perspective of developing inner authority. So one, we're going to talk about decision making because that's quite important. The second thing we're going to be talking about is manipulation, because that is going on all the time, my friends. We're going to run through some little exercises, some experiential concepts, and then we're going to just consider the concept of time. And also another consideration is the world is a reflection, of course, of ourselves. We are going to do a little bit of contemplation on death, and we will close it up with the meditation. The meditation will be separate from this class. It'll be an audio file. So, patience in decision making. Rather than, talk about what patience is, I thought I would discuss it from the perspective of making appropriate decisions and timing appropriate decisions. And what I would like to introduce is, instead of telling you how to make decisions, is a method of questioning. Because a lot of people put pressure on themselves to make decisions. Is that not true? Some of us even pose deadlines, these very artificial deadlines that we impose upon ourselves to force ourselves to make a decision in the time frame that we think is right. But we know that our rational minds and our thinking brains only have access to so much information, and maybe some key pieces are not quite there yet. Maybe some key pieces of information or insights are not present. Maybe you are not ready to make that decision. Maybe you're not in the right state of mind to make a decision. So instead of closing down the walls, instead of like putting ourselves in a box with the walls closing in and less room and less air as our deadline approaches, why don't we open things up a bit? Why don't we invite possibility into the equation when we are faced with making a decision? So I'm going to review just a few questions that you might utilize. Of course, come up with your own. If you've got something that's going to open things up for you and give you more space, I would suggest you use that. So I want people to become really tuned into their inner state, like their sensations, their emotions, what's going on internally, because this does dictate the quality of our lives. So if you were to put your internal state first, before your external state, the internal state first, you put the quality of that state first, how would that change how you make decisions? How might you make decisions if you were putting the quality of your life first? And another good question is, what do you want that quality of inner life to be like? What are some aspects of that? So you might want to feel around for that first. One question I play around with quite a bit is, do I actually need to make decisions? Making something, it implies using force. And force is a kind of aggressive. Patience is not aggressive. Patience has to deal with suffering. That's where the word patience comes from, and time. So it's like suffering over time, which makes this not that popular. But making something happen is an aggressive move. And what I find is often I'm trying to decide, I'm struggling with something, I'm looking at two different sides, I'm weighing things out, things are turning and churning, and then one day I just don't even need to make the decision. Either it's been removed, either I come across a key piece of information, sometimes I've missed a deadline, and sometimes I just walk through it. Like I know what I have to do and I just do it. And there's no, at that point, I'm not agonizing about it. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not wondering and guessing if I'm doing the right thing. So just consider that. Maybe it's not necessary to make a decision. Even though we constantly hear that we're supposed to be decisive, I want you to forget about what you're supposed to be, just for a little bit, okay? Another question is what might happen if you just allowed your life to unfold. So I was listening to one of my favorite lamas a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about a well-known teacher who, and this is in the Buddha Dharma, was a Buddhist teacher, considered an enlightened being, and of course that is a concept that's familiar to Buddhists, but this teacher was asked by one of his students, what's it like to be enlightened? And his response was, spring comes and the grass grows. And what he meant was he didn't have to do anything. He just allowed things to happen. He moved through seasons. He moved through the seasons of his life, allowing things to unfold. What might your life be like if you allowed things to unfold? Do you trust that? Does that make you nervous? My final question is it possible to move through decisions without putting pressure on yourself? Is it possible? What might that look like? What might it look like to move through decisions without the pressure? What if you threw in something else instead of pressure? What if you threw in fun? What if you threw in delight? What if you threw in curiosity? I really like to talk about manipulation. I've been a highly manipulated person, and I know that we are manipulated all the time, all the time, all the time. And you know it too because you hate advertising, I think. I'm guessing. I do. And that is because advertisers know what they're doing. We know everything about making sales. Everything. The human mind is no mystery. How people make decisions is no mystery. We know exactly what it's going to take to make you buy now. And mostly it's putting the pressure on you. So there's fear of missing out. That's FOMO. And there's all kinds of different pressures we face as human beings, as social animals. We don't want to be excluded. There's a social status issue for a lot of us. And so we do experience social pressure. And of course, advertisers and manipulators will take advantage of that. So just, be wary that this is happening. There's fear of loss and scarcity mentality, this fear of not getting something that you might get that might make your life so much better. And is it really going to make your life so much better? No, probably not. But the thing is, you might think that it will because, everyone else is doing it. So that's the social pressure. Or maybe you don't like how you look. That's also a form of social pressure, like the woman in the documentary Broken, and this is a Netflix documentary series, and they were talking about counterfeit makeup, And this one woman was insecure about how she looked. And her friends were all buying a particular brand of lipstick or lip gloss and raving about it. And so she wanted to get in on the action too. And she would try to get this brand, and I think it was Kylie. And whenever she tried to get it, it was sold out. So there's the scarcity. They don't make enough, and then it drives people to buy it as soon as it's ready. And then, of course, it does actually run out. And so every time she would try to buy it, it would be sold out. So she went onto one of these discount websites and found this brand and bought it. And of course, it was a counterfeit brand. It was a ripoff of this particular, I think, Kylie lip balm. And it wasn't the real thing. And they had the people, I don't want to call them manufacturers, because it was probably made in a little cottage somewhere, you know, under a bridge. But the people who put this formula together, in their great wisdom, added crazy glue to give it shine. And this woman crazy glued her lips together. And of course, she was already insecure and anxious, and of course this made it much worse. And her fear of missing out caused her to pay for lipstick that wasn't really lipstick. So that is scarcity, social pressure, and yeah, I don't know what else. A bunch of other things. There's also time pressure. So you know, in sales meetings, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, when you go onto websites and they have the countdown timer. And of course, there's fear of missing out, right? The countdown timer is going, and you have only got, you know, I don't know, 60 seconds to make your decision. And so we know what pressure does to us. It's uncomfortable. We want to get out of it. So, you know, they know that if you have time, you'll think about it. You won't pressure yourself. You'll think about it, and probably you won't buy because probably it's not that important. But if they pressure you, then you have, you know, you turn the intensity up, and you have to, you know, kind of, there's this fear that you're going to lose something, your fear of missing out on something. And so this is a tactic that gets used. So just to exemplify some of this, and what I really want you to do is pay attention to how you feel as we go through these exercises. So I want you to experience something and pay attention to as much detail and as much subtlety as possible, both in the body, in your sensory experience, and in the mental realm as well. So I want you to see what you can pick up on here. So in this exercise, I'm going to give you an imaginary $1,000. That's right, 100 dollar bills, 10 of them, nice and new, crisp. They magically arrive virtually in your wallet or purse. You get to look at them and feel them. There they are. You're welcome. And now we're going to play a game. And the game is you could potentially win more money. That's pretty awesome. So you could take a risk, and the risk is you could maybe earn an extra $1,000. That's pretty nice. So if you flip a coin and it's heads, I will give you another imaginary $1,000. If we get tails, you don't get anything else, but you still get to keep your $1,000. So that's a pretty good deal. You can play it safe, and I'll just give you another $500. Okay, so those are your two options. Guaranteed extra $500, meaning $1,500 in total, or take a risk and potentially get, you know, an extra $1,000, $2,000. So if you need time to think about this, to decide how you would play this game, which option you would take, play it safe or take a risk, feel free to pause, but just maybe mark down what your response is. Okay, and we're going to move on, and when you're ready, you can hit play again. So we're going on to part 2 of the exercise, and in this exercise, again, paying attention to how you feel, feeling your sensations and the subtlety of the mental things going on. So in this exercise, I'm going to give you $2,000, an imaginary $2,000, 20 $100 bills. You are very welcome. And we're going to play a very similar game, except in this game, you know, you could lose. So if you want to play the risk game and you get heads, I take back $1,000. Okay, if you get tails, you get to keep the full 2,000. You could play it safe and just guarantee I'm going to take another $500. So, you know, those are your two options. Take a risk, potentially lose 1,000, potentially lose nothing, or play it safe, you're definitely going to lose $500. So you get $1,500 instead. So take a moment, see how this sits with you, see how it feels with you. When you're ready, you can write down your answer. If you need more time, hit pause and then write down your answer. And we're going to unpack this. So, because this is a recording, I can't go backwards and show you the previous slide, but you might notice that these are essentially the same options. It's exactly the same. It's identical. The numbers are the same. The options are the same. And you might notice you've chosen differently. Like most people, and even primates, we act differently when we stand the chance of losing. We don't like that very much. It's not just risk aversion, it's loss aversion. And there's a certain pressure we feel, and it tends to make us want to take more risks or make us more risky. So this pressure increases our risky behavior. When everything's fine and we can only stand to gain, we tend to play it safe. And because primates also do this, it seems like this is something that's built into us. It is instinctive. So what I wanted you to experience was how you feel and what the difference is between these two, and what kind of sensations are you getting, particularly in the second one. Because obviously if you chose differently in these two scenarios, first and second scenario, if you chose differently, you're not making your choices rationally or logically. And because we're talking about numbers, you might argue should be logical. But of course our decisions are never logical. Our decisions are almost always emotional. These are the things that get in the way. So just food for thought. And when you come across something that feels the same as this, especially this loss one, right? Because maybe you don't want to be risky. Maybe you're a risky person, you don't mind risking, that's fine. But just be aware. I'm going to pose you a third scenario. This is exercise number 3. And this is more of a real life scenario where you don't get free money. But this is something we deal with every day, or a lot of people deal with every day. So this is about the foods that you choose. So, we have our pantry, we have our fridge stocked, we've got our favorite foods that we love. And sometimes they don't always make us feel the best. Sometimes they're addictions, and sometimes we overeat them, etc. So, if your fridge is full and you've got a variety of things to choose from, how do you choose? And again, I want you to feel into your body with this one. Are you going to take a risk and have your favorite food that sometimes makes you feel unwell? Or are you going to play it safe and eat a food that you don't mind? It's okay. You can eat it. You don't hate it. And it almost always feels good. It almost always is energizing or calming or whatever it is that your body needs. So take a moment, feel this out and see how it feels in your body. And then just decide how you would choose. And what I want you to notice more than anything is how this feels different than the other two exercises. Okay, we're moving on. So human beings are the only creatures on the planet that actually have a sense of time. And part of the reason for that is that time is an illusion. from quantum physics, from the highest form of science that we have right now, we know it's been proven time is not real. It is illusory. If it was linear, like we have this concept that it's linear, it would be the same. We could go backwards or we could go forwards. Why would it only go forwards? It would also go backwards. But the reality is that all other creatures on the planet only live in this moment, in the moment now, and now, and now. And that's because that is the reality. We only have this moment. We only have this right now. All moments are existing at this moment. And we have a little slice, we just have a slice of a moment that we can be aware of. And then, you know, another slice, and they're all different, of course, slightly different. This is what creates our concept of time, is because things change. And so if things changing means that time has passed, it's the more that you do, the more time passes. You know, the more changes you make, the more time is running through your life. So one might argue you might want to do as little as possible if you want to enjoy your life. And we know it's very relative. You know, sometimes time moves really quickly and sometimes it's slow. It's not a static thing, regardless of the fact that, you know, supposedly our phones always give us the right time. So just something to consider. You know, the only thing potentially that we have are moments. This is the slide that I refer to as seeing life as a reflection, especially when we're impatient or irritated or angry or resentful. But, you know, who are we impatient with and why? The reality is that we become impatient with the traits that we have. We become patient with others when we see the traits that we dislike in ourselves and they're reflecting them back to us. That's what we dislike. Anything that you dislike in somebody else or in a situation, that is what you actually are, especially in that moment. And I have practiced this a recollection, you know, numerous times. Whenever I take a step back and think to myself, you know what, am I being this thing that I'm clearly detesting so much? The answer is always yes, I am. You know, if I'm ready to call somebody a jerk or I'm thinking that they're a jerk, and you know, if I take a moment and say, am I being a jerk? Yeah, I'm being a jerk. So it's whatever annoys you in that moment, that is exactly what you are. So think of a driving example. Let's say you're trying to do a left turn onto a busy street and there's somebody right up in your tailpipe honking the horn, waving his hands or her hands, kind of, you know, yelling or whatever, maybe giving you the finger, and you might be feeling the pressure. And this person in the back, this person behind you, is thinking to themselves, you are such a bad driver. You're a terrible driver. You shouldn't be on the road. Get out of the way. And in that moment, they are in fact being the ones, they are the terrible drivers. They are the terrible drivers because that's a really unpleasant thing to do to somebody, and they're potentially pressuring somebody that's uncomfortable to do something that's risky and could cause an accident, and that could get them in an accident as well. Because when cars hit, you know, sometimes a third car is also involved. So just consider that. You know, take a step back when you start to get irritated. I'm trying to do this more and more, and what I really like about this is I'm starting to realize that when I'm getting irritable or angry or impatient, I'm like, oh, this is actually really good. This is stirring something up. This is an opportunity for me to practice. An opportunity to practice what? Whatever I want. An opportunity to practice interest in the state. Interest is always wholesome and always beneficial, and it always has the potential to transform any state. So if I'm interested in it, it automatically brightens up. It's the opportunity for me to practice being a loving human being. So if I'm really irritated with somebody, then I can, use that opportunity to be like, hey, can I turn this around? Can I, instead of sending daggers, can I send little hearts? So there's numerous opportunities to practice in everyday, mundane life. And see if you can catch some of these. If it's going on all the time, it's pretty hard. So, we need space in order to do this well. So try to give yourself as much space as possible. And this brings us to death, because maybe this is part of the reason why we're impatient. We know we're going to die, and that is the reality. And so we want to do as much and experience as much as possible before that time. But really, death is the end of all our troubles. It's, there's not going to be any bills to pay when we're dead. All our debt magically gets erased. We're not responsible for it anymore. We won't have to pay taxes. We won't have to do taxes. You don't have to worry about anything after you're dead. So in some ways, it's really nothing to worry about, because everything's going to end. We know this. Every state ends. Every unpleasantness always ends, even if it ends in death. And the reality is that patience comes when you realize that everything is on its way to resolution. And if nothing else, that resolution is death. Whatever unpleasantness you're going through, it will end, guaranteed. And the stance of patience is, I know it's going to end. Because everything is impermanent. This is the truth. And, the only thing that we have are our moments, our unique experience. That's the only thing that belongs to us, because our body certainly does not belong to us. That comes from the earth, and it will go back to the earth in whatever form. But it's going to be gone. And the only thing that we get to have, we don't get to take money. We don't get to take our favorite pair of shoes. We don't get to take our relatives or the people that we love. But we have our experiences in this moment, and that is what we truly have. And so no matter how unpleasant something is, it's still precious, because it's fleeting, because it will be gone before we know it. And I guarantee you, no matter how painful your last breaths are when you're on your deathbed, and it will happen, those last breaths of air, will be cherished, because those are your moments, no matter the experience, no matter how painful. And so I really love this contemplation of death, because it brings everything into clarity. Because why would I want to waste my time being irritable or impatient? I want to enjoy what I have, even if it's unpleasant. That's the ideal. I'm not saying that I always accomplish this, but trying makes a difference. But you don't want to try too hard with patience, because that doesn't work, right? You can't try to be patient. You just maybe ask a question, maybe open up the situation a little bit, maybe just refocus, or open things up to other possibilities. Have interest. So before I end this, I had mentioned to a few people that I am coming out with an online program that is all about developing body awareness for the purpose of inner authority and decision making. This is going to be a self-directed online course. You're welcome to join the Facebook group. I am going to be selling it at half price as a pre-sale. I don't really want to sell it at $125 because I put tons of time into it. However, I do want a few people to buy it and give me feedback. So that's why I'm offering this price. I don't have a set time for when it will be going up to $250, but when I finish the program in its entirety and it's complete and it's up and running, that's when I will raise the price. But if you want to pre-purchase it, and I promise you I'll get it done and it's pretty close, then I will sell it for $125, and all I want from you is feedback and maybe a review. So that would be the deal on that one, and I will send you more information. And because a few people have, I've mentioned to a few people also that I'm going to be doing group classes. So I'm doing a core empowerment course. It's going to have a soft ending. It's going to be 6 to 8 weeks. It's set for 6 weeks, but we might extend it just depending on where people are at, because I want people to achieve something before we finish it off. And this is to help people anchor into a core sense of self and a core sense of their own authenticity. So that will probably be up and running in the fall, and this is just a heads up for that. And so this concludes the Developing Patience masterclass, and we're going to go on to the practice right now, which is a meditation. So to participate in that, go to the audio portion of this class. Okay, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you or hear you, talk to you in the audio portion. Bye.